Welcome, everyone, to a new episode of Your Friendly Physicist and Other Nerds. I'm Lucas, the host of this podcast, and I'm in conversation with scientists all around the world that help to create the world we live in today and tomorrow. Together, we take a close look at trends and cutting-edge technology, explain how the smallest things influence the big, and generally talk nerdy stuff. So stay tuned, no matter if you are a newbie to physics and interested to learn about the world of friendly scientists, or if you're up for a PhD-worthy nerd talk. Today's guest is Christian Kuttner, a senior editor at Nature Communications, and with him I will talk today about how the job of an editor actually looks like, how the academic publishing system works or sometimes does not work, where it still needs improvement, and what challenges await us in the future. Thank you for joining me on the show, Christian. A warm welcome to you.
Before we start, I want to shortly introduce you. So you did your PhD at the University of Bayreuth. This is also where we both met. And then you went first to the IPF Dresden, so the Institute for Polymer Research, and then to San Sebastian as a postdoc, or as a Marie Curie Fellow, then to San Sebastian.
Yes, so the Marie Curie Fellowship is an individual fellowship that gives you a lot of freedom to do your own research.
Mm-hmm. Your research basically was doing your PhD, but also doing your postdoc. You focused on the synthesis of, I think the main nanoparticles was made of gold, but I think you also did other metal nanoparticles. But let's say the synthesis of gold, the surface functionalization of these gold nanoparticles, their assembly behavior, and how to exploit their plasmonic behavior. So this is this famous application, the SERS, surface enhanced Raman spectroscopy, for example. There you did a lot of stuff. And then you joined the Nature Springer group in Germany, in Berlin, as an editor. And right now you are a senior editor, and you're taking care of editing of manuscripts that are submitted to Nature Communications. So welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here on board.
Thanks for having me, Lucas.
So maybe we start with you in the beginning. It might be interesting for the audience to know why you decided to leave the labs and the experiments, data analysis, and everything that comes with being a researcher, a chemist, a physicist. You're somewhere in between with the heart on the battlefield of science. Why leaving all this behind and become a scientific editor?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It was a rough ride, to be honest. So when I was in Spain, I learned a lot about the interface between physical science and life science, because I was developing a technique to identify the chemical communication between bacteria for identifying lung infections at a very early stage.
Mm-hmm.
And while I always enjoyed working in the lab, there's a natural progression for being more in the field of managing your own science when transitioning to having your own group. Certainly, there was the big hiatus when the pandemic hit, the lockdown, the institutes were not accessible anymore. So naturally, I had to leave the lab at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And started to think about returning to Germany and finding a permanent position, which is a big challenge, to be honest. During the time, I was applying for many positions in Germany for junior professorships, W2 professorships, and I was also mildly successful in acquiring and getting calls. But at the same time, while I was at home with my family, I saw an opportunity in an ad from the Springer Nature group where they were looking for an editor at Nature Communications for physical chemistry, which is exactly my topic. And when I applied for the position, I had a nice interview in which I explained that my passion was in nanomaterials. And out of serendipity, this was specifically the missing link in the team, because they had a lack of people that were passionate about nanomaterials on a broad scale.
Mm-hmm.
In different varieties. So I started to become an editor, while at the same time applying to continue my academic path.
Mm-hmm.
But to be honest, I enjoyed it so much, being a little bit more distant from my own work and being disconnected in a way, but also connected to many new fields and opportunities. And that is why I continued to work as an editor, even though I could have then made the step back into academia.
What does a typical day look like?
Yeah, well, I'm sure that might be different for some people. For me, if I subtract all the family obligations that I have and I just look at the work, it's a lot of reading, reading new submissions, reading up on literature, reading revised manuscripts and referee reports. And then, of course, also a big part is taking decisions, reflecting on what people are telling me about the work, on their perception of the advance, on technical and conceptual concerns. And then, of course, also there's communication. It's a big element. You have to communicate your decisions. You have to communicate to questions from colleagues, also from authors and reviewers. You're basically problem solving all day long.
That's not too far away from the home ground of a scientist.
Actually, it isn't. The only thing is that you're no longer the creator of content. You are also not the reviewer of content. You are the curator. You are doing a selection.
So you're changing perspectives.
A lot, yeah, totally. And also there's the aspect of documentation, because everything that we do needs to be documented in a way that others could follow up your decision-making process. Should you be not available because of a leave, because of conferences, because of whatever happens to you?
But I don't see a problem there with you, because I remember I looked at your lab book, but then when we shared a lab in Bayreuth, and when that was kind of yeah, this is how a lab book should look like, actually.
Well, thank you for the compliment.
So now we get a little bit of insight what you as an editor are doing. What do you think? What skills do you need the most as an editor?
Well, first and foremost, I guess it should be a deep curiosity, so a broad interest in science and in general. Then it actually helps a lot having communication skills and also time management skills, because you work rather independently, even though you're working in an editorial team, especially at Nature Communications and the Nature portfolio, you are responsible for your field. So while you can get an input from other people, you have to show responsibility for your decisions. And also there's the aspect of frustration tolerance, because not everybody is happy when you're rejecting their work. So you have to be, on one hand, considerate enough to explain your decisions in detail, but on the other hand, also be strict. And well, this can be a challenge. And also, this is a bonus skill that every editor should have, and this is a way to fight decision fatigueness. Because as soon as you get tired of making decisions, you can no longer continue your work.
Now, if someone is curious about becoming an editor, what would be your advice?
So certainly, as an editor, you need a research background. You need to understand the publishing business and how the society of researchers works. But one aspect, and you might certainly agree, because this has profited us a lot, is to build your network. So you have to talk to people within your discipline, but also to other fields. You should feel comfortable and interested in reading outside of your field. You should have confidence. This is the confidence that you need in taking decisions. And most certainly, when you start as an editor, you don't have all the skills that you need to do the job. But for that reason, we have an onboarding training, and you get all the things that you need from this training, I guess.
Yeah. I would add one thing, because maybe as a background for our listeners, so Christian and me, we met last week in Berlin on a conference, and we talked a lot there also about other things, but also about this, and especially about confidence and having confidence in your own abilities, and not being afraid to apply for jobs where you not fit 100%. And this is actually exactly what you did. You did not only apply for junior professors, W2 professorships, or other positions. No, I mean, it was maybe a coincidence that you saw this advertisement. But if you did not saw this advertisement, maybe you saw some other advertisement, said, hey, let's go for it. And then having multiple options, and in the end, you stick to something where you were not expecting that this might
Mhm.
be your future job. This is, I think, also one quite important point.
And you have to also understand that when you are interacting with many people from different cultures all around the globe, there are differences in how you can communicate on a professional level. So you should have email etiquette for sure. You should be polite. You should be organized. You should have some efficiency in thinking critically and also quick. You are interacting with people that are doing the science job on a much longer time scale than you have been active. So when you talk to professors that are in the field for more than 20, 30 years, there's certainly a different hierarchy. So it might help a bit if you had at least, I don't know, one or maybe two experiences outside of your PhD in the form of a postdoc or in, I don't know, if you're involved in a collaborative research center, something that allows you to have an understanding about the system, how it works. Because you have to be responsible for a field and you should also be knowledgeable. It doesn't mean that you should be close to a Nobel Prize, but having at least demonstrated that you've published as a first author, maybe even as a corresponding author in a field, to have gained some visibility and credibility also. That's important.
Yeah, thanks for this great insight. Another, let's say, part of all of this is the publishing houses themselves. Maybe very simple, but maybe also a very complex question. Let's see. What is the purpose of a publishing house?
So first and foremost, here I have to be a little bit political and say what my company is usually telling other people. So Springer Nature advances the discovery by publishing robust and insightful research, supporting the development of new areas of knowledge, and making ideas and information accessible around the world. Doesn't this sound poetic? So I guess in general, publishing houses are at the service of the research community. So we are providing a service which is to disseminate research results, opinions, ideas, and also a journal, or let's say a publisher provides journals which are similar to a stage. And depending on which stage we are talking about, maybe society journals are more about being very inclusive, showing the whole field and how it is interconnected. Some other journals are more exclusive and try to promote very specific advances that deserve highlighting.
But with exclusive, you mean it's very niche?
Not niche from the perspective of the topics that are handled, but they cannot publish everything. Right? They have to make a cut at one point and say we limit ourselves to the most notable advances with the widest application, with the broadest interest, to allow for some focus. And all of our attention spans are limited, and also resources are limited. So if you want to put a highlight on something, you need to focus, and this is interconnected with saying no.
Where would you see Nature in this, let's say, spectrum?
So when we talk about Nature as the journal, it is at the very top. There's nothing above it from our perspective. There's something laterally on the sides. There's certainly science, and there are some important journals when it comes more to medical sciences. But we certainly want to publish things that are multidisciplinary. Means, for example, when you have a paper that is about physical sciences, it should be able for a biologist to understand it, or at least to understand that it's an important work and it has implications, and also vice versa. A biology paper in Nature should be understood by a physical scientist that it's of importance.
So you said in the very beginning, part of the definition of a publishing house is to provide a certain service for the community. And Nature takes quite a bunch of money for this service that it provides for the scientific community. So it does not come for free. I mean, publishing a paper in Nature, it is expensive. What is the money actually used for?
First and foremost, publishing, I guess, has never been truly free because money needs to be earned at one place or the other to make the whole process possible. There are certain aspects that need to be taken into account that might justify, to some extent, the costs. So when we talk about costs, usually we talk about article processing charges, which today means it's the money that a corresponding author has to pay for the paper appearing in the journal, which involves all the processing steps before. So if we talk about Nature, the APCs at the moment is roughly 10,000 euros, which is a significant amount. But you have to also understand that we have professional editors that are doing this as a job. So they need to be paid for certain reasons. And one important reason is editorial independence. So if you have editors that also do research at as their core profession and only do the editing on the side, taking decisions might have detrimental repercussions on their research career, because saying no to some people might not be very welcomed.
Mm-hmm.
And on the other hand, there's the aspect of open access. So when you publish a paper as a society journal, almost free of charge, or let's say free of charge, at one point the society needs to compensate for their costs, for example, by subscription fees. So in the end, it's the libraries and the large institutes that pay the process. And also there's the aspect of exclusivity. So let's say Nature, I'm talking now about Nature communication because I feel more comfortable in revealing our numbers than making estimates about their numbers. So we publish roughly, let's say, 15 to 20% of the manuscripts that we receive, which on the other hand means that 80% of the manuscripts that we have a look at, that we read, that we do an assessment, and maybe even organize a peer review, are not appearing in the journal. So you know that when you pay your APC charges, you're not only paying your article, you're paying for the whole process and the assessment of many other manuscripts. So it's an averaging effect that takes place here. And maybe I want to highlight something because you say it's expensive. First of all, from our perspective, we both are living in Germany, had done research at institutes in Germany. While the APCs appear high, there are a lot of countries in the world, and for researchers from these countries, the APCs cannot be paid at all. So it is the responsibility of the publishing house to find solutions for this inequality.
This is a perfect bridge to the next question. If you have now, let's say, rich countries with rich universities, which have a lot of money that can be used for publishing, and then you have other countries that are poorer, isn't this making the whole system more exclusive, and the inequality becomes higher? I don't know the numbers of Nature or Nature Communications, how many submissions you receive from, let's say, rich countries. I imagine the US is a rich country in this regard, or some European countries for which these APS are not that high. Let's say you get a submission of a paper with extraordinary high quality. It is, you see immediately it is worth publishing in Nature Communication, but the author said 10,000 euro is too high. We cannot pay this.
Let me start here. So while Nature has an APC of 10,000 roughly, it gets cheaper when you go a bit down. So in Nature Communications, we have APCs of 5,700 euros. And then if we go further down, there's the communications journals and also scientific reports, and then it's 2,000 euros. So there is an option also for authors to publish, but of course there should be a home for every article. So for that reason, we have a system in action which allows authors to apply for discounts or for waivers. And if they can explain that they're from a country that has limited resources, we have a clear list of countries that are accepted in to provide limited access to publication support, then we usually waive a part or all of the costs that are involved. I cannot promise that this is the case for all the people that submit and ask for a waiver, but this is not what the editorial side of the company is deciding, but this is what the business side is then deciding. And it goes even further. So when you talk about inequality in respect to funding, there's also inequality in respect to technical possibilities. So you cannot expect that an electron microscope, there might be differences in the technical possibilities, depending on how much these equipment have been advanced over the last years. And if there is a difference there's an equality on all levels. There's an inequality on the amount people are paid, about the technical possibilities, about the funding that is available. And I don't want to start talking about the labor conditions.
Yeah.
So there's only limited possibilities to counteract this. And we try to do this in the form of doing outreach, specifically in these countries, and to reduce the cost.
Because I can imagine, I mean, having a Nature paper, yeah, it's very prestigious. And this can change the career of a individual researcher, but also the path of a chair, because now it has this Nature paper, whatever, and now it can apply for certain fundings with which this chair can get a new electron microscope or whatever. And then it's a self-enhanced loop, which might result in another Nature paper or a third or whatever.
Yeah, it's certainly a feedback loop, and it has to start at one point. And this is the researcher taking the risk to submit their work, starting, having the confidence and submit to a high-tier journal and explain the advance of their work and fighting also for it to be published. I wanted to highlight another aspect maybe, and this is when we talk about high costs in publishing, there are also high gains. So our publishing house is making good money, for sure, others are doing as well. But to explain how the system works, it's not the top tier journals that make the most contribution to these gains and to these profits. It is actually the opposite. So it's not about how expensive one paper is that you are publishing. It is about how many papers are you publishing. Because if you look at the very bottom, there's a lot of examples in other publishing houses of publishers of which I want to not name the name. But if we talk about the Nature portfolio, we have Scientific Reports. And many people don't know that Scientific Reports is the largest journal in the world. Yeah, with more than, I guess it was 25,000 publications per year. And if you then just roughly calculate 25,000 publications times an APC of 2,000 euros, that's a significant amount of money, and it's much more than Nature at the very top is providing in this system. And the reason for that is also that we are having a pyramid hierarchy where you have some journals that are more located at the top and some that are more located at the bottom. And of course, if manuscripts are rejected, they get handed down. There's an opportunity to transfer. So in the end, the lower tier journal at the bottom have the opportunity to publish a lot. I don't want to talk down on these journals. They have a very important responsibility, and this is to provide original articles that are both technically sound and scientifically valid, which is reason enough to publish the work.
When you say this number, 25,000 papers a year, what is this in context, for example, to now Nature Communications? How many papers do you publish per year?
That's easy to see because we do not have page numbers, we have article numbers. So when you look on last year, how much articles were published, I think we reached 6,000. I could be wrong by an error of 500,000, no clue. Because this also includes commissioned work. And commissioned work, this includes question and answer articles, news and views, comments, reviews, perspective articles, and all of these are free of charge.
Speaking free of charge, there are other, let's say, open access alternatives, let's say paper archives or manuscript archives. What do you think about these?
It's an important step because let's look at the time where we did not have an archive opportunity. You submitted your manuscript to a journal, it was assessed, and sometimes the peer review can take longer, the revisions can take longer. So the time between submission and when it was available to the broader research landscape and it's published can be a long time. Let's say half a year, which is the average for our journal, but it can even be 1 year. And there's a lot that happens in between. And then even though on your paper it is written submission date X and publication date Y, people see that it has been available like 1 year earlier, the community is not aware of it. So an archive, or let's say an open access alternative to publications is important. Our company likes the idea so much that we bought a repository. It's a preprint server called Research Square, where authors are encouraged to deposit their work when they submit an article to us. So the article is immediately accessible to everybody free of charge. And people even see at which journal it is under consideration and at what stage it is roughly located at. This is, I guess, important just to avoid scooping. Scooping is the process when you have a journal, a manuscript under consideration, and someone else rapidly publishes something before your article appears online.
Do they get updated? So when you have, for example, now the first round of revisions, the revisions are visible as well together with the article there?
Yeah.
And
so this is in the authors are responsible for doing this, as far as I know. But yes, that's how the system is designed.
when the article eventually appears then in Nature Communications or some other subjournal of Nature, is it still available there?
Yeah. It makes sense to keep the original versions, plural, available just to see the development of some manuscripts that they took through the peer review. I feel it's not enough to have a look at the final article when it is published. It's important also to see the progression. For that reason, something that we are doing now, it's called transparent peer review, is the process of publishing the exchanges between authors and reviewers alongside the final product. So people can understand that there have been concerns and how these have been met. Something that we also enjoy and promote is when the archive article is cited in the published article, so people know that it's linked.
Yeah, I really like the idea of this transparent review process and to publish the conversation or discussion, sometimes even between authors and reviewers together with the article, because it's part of the publishing process, and a published paper can look very different from the first submitted version. If you know as a reviewer that your reviews eventually will be published together with the article, I'm sure you will review in a different way, in a different kind, different style, for sure.
Even though your name is not revealed, and
Exactly.
even though you don't have to sign your report, you take the responsibility of what you write.
Yeah.
And if you write it biased and unfair, people will know.
Yeah, maybe this we have to state. So the review process is still, let's say, not double-blinded and also not fully transparent. So the reviewers see who has submitted or see the names of the authors, but not vice versa.
Yeah, we have both options. We have single-blinded and double-blinded.
Okay.
What we don't have is triple-blinded, so the editor knows all the people involved. Maybe also this is not limited to archived articles and preprints. This also involves conference proceedings. In some disciplines, it is quite common to publish your work in a limited, premature way at a conference in a proceeding, and then publish a full paper afterwards, which might even partially overlap in content and results. So for that reason, it's just important to have a link between all of these versions.
I have another question. It goes a bit more in the direction, how can we decrease maybe the submission fees for authors? What do you think about the idea of having AI editors or AI reviewers?
Let me correct you, we don't have submission fees. We have article processing charges, which are charged when it is published. So you can always submit your article to us free of charge. Talking about AI editors and reviewers, I have to ask a question back to the community. Do we actually want this? So I know that everybody sees an opportunity in speeding up processes by getting AI involved. And certainly it is AI tools are very valuable in, let's say, getting rid of tedious and repetitive tasks. But I would not be comfortable in having an AI taking decisions. And as we have discussed before, publishing a paper in a reputable journal can make the difference um, in selection committees. So whether you get a job, a position or not. So I would feel uncomfortable having my work being solely assessed by an AI. There should always be a human taking responsibility for the decision, similar to autonomous driving, right?
Mm.
Even though the car could, in principle, drive on its own, fully responsible, someone needs to take ownership of the decisions.
Yeah, I think the question goes more into the direction what you just said, having AI tools or AI assisted reviewers, maybe, that you said, okay, if you submit a paper, you're at the forefront of your respective field. Yeah, there is usually nothing that is comparable to your study because this is the unique selling point. Yeah, you're enlarging the common knowledge of humanity in this very tiny field. And how to use now an AI, fully 100% AI reviewer or editor for this process. I think this is something, at least not yet. I mean, who knows what comes in 20, 25 years or so. But maybe having an AI for proofreading, for grammar, for typos. I mean, I don't know if you're already doing this.
I have limited insight into our production processes, but I can tell you we are using AI to some extent. One aspect that is quite important is literature research. You want to compare the advances that are claimed in the manuscript against what has been published before in an alternative approaches and in previous work. And that's a lot of work because it's hard to keep up with the rapid development of the field, and with many manuscripts we're handling, I'm jumping between topics a lot. So it's hard to remain at the forefront. But also for that reason, we are involving human reviewers that have experience and insight. I feel uncomfortable having an AI reviewer. I also have, we are very strict in not allowing AIs to act as authors because they cannot take responsibility for what they are writing. I've seen a couple of cases where it became apparent that text sections in manuscripts have been produced by an AI because of some specific terms that you find at the beginning of some of these text elements. But I feel there's no blame in using an AI for improving your language, right? For a lot of the researchers, English is not their native language, and there's certainly no blame in trying to polish the way of writing.
Do you get a lot of submissions where authors have done, for example, this, and then they state at some point AI was used, or this and this tool was used for improving language?
It's very seldom that authors are honest about how they polish their language. But what we are asking them is to acknowledge the use of AI similar in the method section, similar to any other technical equipment they have been using, and just be open and say, hey, you've used this specific AI using these parse terms. I don't know, for example, for getting a collection of literature items, because then at least in the end, if something goes horribly wrong, we can understand why, and has been communicated transparently.
I mean, the more we talk, but also before, I mean, I really have the impression that nature is taking this transparent process really serious. And it's also taking a lot from nature side to be as transparent as possible. Because I think you were one of the first journals. So not your Nature Communications, but Nature as a publishing house who is publishing the reviews together with the articles.
Yeah, this has been in a pilot phase over the last years. And for Nature Communications, we made it mandatory since 2022, if I remember correctly. where all new submissions will be published with the reports, and it's no longer an option.
Now, we talked a lot about the publishing process at Nature. Now, you as an editor, what advice would you give a researcher that has a very sound scientific idea and a very super nice manuscript, how to write a Nature script?
So if you are for all listeners, if you are deeply interested in this topic, please invite me to come to your institute. I love to give how to publish in Nature talks, because this just needs a little bit of time to explain. First and foremost, we don't have the golden solution to everything, but I think what we are doing, it's one of the things that has developed over many, many years, that it's just important to communicate clearly and honestly what is the significant advance that you're presenting. You cannot shoot at too many targets. You need to focus on what is the most significant advance, maybe have a secondary objective that you have been hitting, but nevertheless, it should be clear what are you presenting. And this is it's so clear, and in many good research labs, this is taught to the youngest students at an early age. Just be clear, what have you done, why have you done it, and how is it better, or at least equally as good as what others have been publishing? What is the merit to the community? What do we learn? Is it a mechanistic insight? Is it a new opportunity for an application? Is it an application with a high, let's say, practical relevance? So how do you open doors for others? And this is the aspect of communicating what you have done, and then is the aspect of how you communicate it. You should try to avoid subjective language. And this is something many reviewers, many authors are bad in doing, and that's to be a little bit more humble. If you're presenting something very exciting, you don't need hyped language. You don't need these buzzwords like novel, unique, exceptional, extreme. Sometimes it's a cherry on top, but this cherry is not actually needed. The cake is already good enough. Just be a little bit humble in what you're presenting, giving credit to others that have done it before or in a similar way, and then having a high presentation quality. And that's also something that is taught in good research labs. How can you present your data in an honest way and make it just accessible to many people?
Yeah, communication skill.
True, for sure. And also going to conferences, presenting your work, answering tough questions. This will help you to write a better article.
I really like the picture you said. How is your research opening doors for others? Because if you can answer this in a very clear and immediate way, then you know that your research really makes an impact and provides a certain value for others in the future. And then it's really important for the community. That is, I think, a really nice picture.
You can somehow look at research as a whole as a tree that is always growing and branching out. And we don't particularly are interested in works that are terminating a branch. We rather like to see the points where it branches out in many new fields, right? And also connections between two fields are of high importance, because they form new links, new opportunities for research.
Yeah, it's cool. A tree is such a nice symbol for everything. Whenever I went in a seminar or the workshop, and the question is, please present a picture or a symbol for science or for research or for the academic system, I always go for a tree. I have another question coming from the community. It's a bit an off-topic question because it's not focusing too much on Nature and your editor job. But I got asked, there is this term predatory journal. Can you maybe explain, you as an editor have maybe a more insight into this? What does it mean when a journal becomes predatory, and what can be done to prevent this?
I guess there are many different definitions of predatory journal. I would say we as a research community, we have certain expectations, how we want articles to be assessed, for them to finally reach the stage where they can be published and made broadly available. And predatory journals, they focus more on monetary benefits than for having a rigorous peer review. You might see this as an easy example. It's the number of reviewers that you select, their expertise, and how serious their concerns, if there are any, are then involved in the decision-making process. If you publish a lot, often these mega journals are under the impression of being predatory, which cannot be said per se. You have to look deeper into, is the peer review process rigorous? Are the editorial policies strict? And does this journal publish work that is of high value and high quality? And I'm not talking about high quality on Nature level, but just something that you feel comfortable in sharing with the research community.
I mean, this second aspect might be a bit easier to detect, but if a paper has a certain quality, a certain standards, but if you're a non-expert in this field and it's hard to judge. And for the first aspect, I mean, it's these predatory journals, they don't have this transparent review process where you see the reviews in the end and also not the communication with the editor. And what of the issues raised by the reviews eventually is incorporated in the published manuscript. So it's hard to detect this, no?
Yeah, here we can start to talk about transparency and also reputation. So when you go to a journal that has been active for many years and has been known for producing for publishing solid research work, then this is also already a good indicator. And then as soon as you submit to such a journal and you receive the referee reports, you can learn a lot about how the peer review process is handled by just looking at the feedback of the reviewers.
Yeah.
If these have been indeed the experts in the field that are assessing your work, or it's just a generic report that more tries to, I don't know, include works of the reviewer. We have all seen this. Please publish my work as well. It's tough. I would trust the community, talk to people that are doing the research business for longer and ask about their opinion about certain journals. And then in the end, it's just about look in the journal, what is published and what is your opinion about the quality of this work.
It's a good approach, I think.
Even if you look back at scientific reports, it has been considered a predatory journal from some institutions for some time in the past because of poor decisions. But when you publish a lot, some things slip through. And then is the question, how fast do you act? Are these poor decisions corrected? And is it communicated openly and transparently what went wrong?
So these are probably the challenges for the future of these houses, no?
Yeah.
Keeping up transparency while still being as inclusive, meaning not topic-wise, but researcher-wise as possible.
And also for the journals, I mean, the editors make the decisions. Let's say you have to distinguish between two types of journals. There's the journals that are editorially independent, where everything is decided and handled by professional editors. And then there's the other option where you have editorial boards, where you get the research community involved in the decision-making process. And none of the two is inherently better or worse. It's just two flavors, and both can lead to very excellent publications and assessments. But the editor that handles your manuscript and has a name and a reputation. If you go to a journal that has a reputable editor that has done this job for a couple of years and has done good decisions, then you can know for sure that this is a low chance of being a predatory journal.
Nice answer. What's ahead of you? What are your future plans?
So, well, there's a lot that goes on in the background because the authors, editors, the authors and reviewers, they only see the core business, what we are doing. But there's a lot that is being decided behind closed doors in the background in respect to data reproducibility and how we share data, how we make data available. So a lot of, let's say, things that might also change over the couple of years ahead of us. And I am very much involved in an initiative that is connected with reproducibility. It is too early to tell what we are trying to achieve, but I feel that reproducibility is very important, and we need to put more attention to having that our published research is reproducible. And for sure, I have now spent a bit more than 2 years with Nature Communications. It was a very insightful and pleasant ride so far, but there are many opportunities in the publishing business, right? I would certainly love to see also other publishers, but at the moment I'm feeling so comfortable in what I'm doing. I would rather continue doing it a little bit more. And let's see what comes up in the future.
Sounds super nice. And also this future project with reproducibility. Maybe we see you again on this show, the second episode. Let's see.
That would be nice for sure.
Yeah, Christian, thank you so much for sharing these great insights into how a publishing house works. It's super important to have a constant exchange between different perspectives, different hierarchy levels.
For sure. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Take care and see you around at some conference.
Excellent.
Cool.
Thanks,
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions, feedback, wishes, or if you disagree with anything Christian or me just said, let us know in the Spotify comment section below or simply reach out to me on LinkedIn or Instagram. And also feel free to drop me a short message if you have an exciting story you want to share in this podcast. So thanks for tuning in, take care, and see you soon on the next episode of Your Friendly Physicist and Other Nerds.